Hey everybody, Stone here with Wood and Stone. Today I want to talk about Carter Products AccuRight Log Mill. I'm going to use this to clean up this log. I have their miter mill I'm going to cut this parallel, and then the log mill will help me clean up the edges, just get the sapwood out on this. But really like this for dealing with logs, but also like kind of anything that has weird shapes to it that I need to cut lengthwise. It's not really going to work best on a table saw. Works really well on the bandsaw with this particular tool. So I have all my pieces and parts pulled apart here. The thing that you'll notice when you get this is that this comes together, but it's loose. These are held in place, but a little bit loose. So what you want to do is you want to set this up so that your bandsaw blade is close to the edge but not touching. And then tighten down your screws here. That's a number 3 Phillips that you use there. Then on the bottom here, there are a bunch of little set screws that are operated by like an eyeglass size flathead screwdriver. And what that does is it pushes out the other side here so that you can get it so that it sits snug in your T-slot. You do not want it so that there's a lot of force needed to move it. You just, on the other end of the spectrum, you don't want it so that it's wobbling back and forth, because that makes for inaccurate cuts. So you want it so that it doesn't wobble back and forth, but also doesn't take force to push forward, because that's just going to wear down everything, the T-slot and the set screws, and it can also it causes an issue with actually operating the tool properly. After you have this set up, the next piece that you want to do is you're going to put this mylar tape, and it goes, there's 2 rolls here, or 2 little strips here. It goes on the bottom side, on either side of your piece, and you do want it to go past the edge, and it's going to roll up the face. That way, when you're sliding this back and forth, it doesn't grab onto your table saw. If you cut it so that it's clean here, that end will grab on the edge of your tabletop, and then it fills with sawdust, and then eventually falls apart. If you have it rolled up over the edge, it prevents that from happening. So we want that to go along the bottom and then roll up over the edge. Take the time. Tool setup is one of those things in general. You always want to take the time to slow down, get it right, make sure everything's set up properly. So take the time, make sure there's no wrinkles in your piece. That way this all sits really nice. And then we'll let this side also roll up the edge. And then we'll speed up through the second one while I do that. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the fence, and I want it facing the side, because mine happens to be off-center to fit my bandsaw. I want it facing the side that's going to be facing the blade. So the blade will run as I operate this on this side. You can flop those back and forth. These are the screws that are going to come up from the bottom, and then this comes down on top to hold the back side of this. So I'm going to flip this around. You can see what that looks like. And they are designed to sit in that slot on the bottom so that they're not scratching or caught or sitting on your bandsaw at all. So I'll get this tightened down and I can show you. I'll flip this out. So you see how that screw head sits inside the slot? That's how you want it to be set up for your bandsaw operation. And I'll do this one. This allows us adjustment. Okay, so there's that set up. And then we're going to take this piece. It goes in this slot up here, okay, or these two slots up here, and then this one adjusts based on where you want your log to end up going. So that's what the rest of these black bolts and washers are for. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll speed up through this process as well. It's just going to take me a minute. Okay, so in real time, this setup is going to take you about 10-15 minutes. Now I've used these and set these up before, so I knew how I was going to go together. So my expectation is mine's going to go quicker than your first time putting this together. But it's still a really simple setup, and it's really important for you to, in all these tooling setups, you want to take the time to slow down, make sure everything is accurate and square. Remember, you're only as good as your tools are. So you want everything to be correct so that once these are set up right, then you can go fast as you're doing everything else, because you know you're making accurate cuts along the way, or any of your other tools that are doing various different things. Everything's operating the way it's supposed to, so you're not going to fight against those. So a little bit of extra time now speeds up the process later. So now we will go over to the bandsaw, and I'll show you how this bad boy operates and how I have it set up for the bandsaw and the way that I use it most often. Okay, now we're over on the bandsaw with the Carter Products log mill, their AccuRight Log Mill. And what I'm going to do is I'm so I set the depth up, and the screw is on the back side here. So this is pinched between two supports here that are keeping this from moving, right? So everything's adjusted, it's tight. When my hands aren't on it, see how little it moves? I like to do this, I'm doing this on a log right now. But you can do this on really out of whack boards instead of going through a bunch of times on a joiner. You can throw it on here for shorter stuff. You can throw it on here to get it like cleaned up, a close edge, then go to the joiner. Now you got a flat edge to work with. Same thing applies here. In this case, I'm just taking off the sapwood so I can see underneath. I seen some checking in this log, so I thought I was going to have to reinforce it with epoxy before I started turning it. I found out after I sliced the top off, which is the edge that you're seeing, there's very little checking in the core. So I'm suspecting the same is going to happen once I clean off the edges. But I want to do that. It makes it easier to turn, but it also helps me to kind of see what I'm getting into and how much I need to reinforce this with epoxy. Hopefully none, but if I need to, I want to know that now before I throw it on the lathe. So I'm using the Carter Products, their 5/8, 3 TPI, 3 tooth per inch bandsaw blade. That's kind of my workhorse blade. I do use a couple of other ones, but this is probably 90% of the work that I do on the bandsaw. This is what I use. And we're going to make sure everything's nice and clear before we turn everything on. Pop my earplugs in, we'll get this going, and then I'll go through and slice off the edges so we can kind of see what we got underneath the sapwood. Okay. You want to make sure that your blades stop before you start working with everything else. So I'm going to, because of course if everything goes perfect, nothing will go wrong, right? But things rarely go perfect, and when they don't go perfect, you want it to be on something that's not going to be your body. So just make sure everything is, that you're working safe, your saw blades stop before you do that. So that's our edge sliced off. And you can see, instead of turning this into sawdust, I can still probably get like a couple pen blanks or knife scales out of that. That way it doesn't all go to waste. This is pink ivory. So for those of you that don't know, this is a super rare wood that has limited harvesting licenses now. This particular piece and the one that I'm about to set this down with, these two I got from a retired woodworker that this was in their collection. So this was bought like 30 plus 40 years ago or something along those lines, which is probably why it's dried out so much and you see that checking. But again, you can see the core doesn't have any of that issue, so I think I'm going to get away without doing epoxy. But this particular tool is the Carter Products Log Mill. That's the Carter Products 5/8 3 TPI bandsaw blade, and that's what accomplished this. So I'm going to go through and just slice off the other pieces, get it ready for, get kind of like a rough blank to make a vase out of that pink ivory, and go from there. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.